Hello, happy Sunday. Welcome to episode 3 of Dooner's Guide Through Mirkwood, one New Yorker's tale of pivoting from surviving to thriving on the landscape of the new frontier. Today's April 19th, 2020. I'm your host, Mike Dooner Muldoon, broadcasting live from Mirkwood One Studios in Mayapack, New York, which is in Putnam County, about an hour north of the city. We've got lots of exciting things going on here this week since we last spoke. Really looking forward to sharing a lot of this with you. Most of which is my first guest on the show. Kirk Taylor is going to be dialed in from Columbus, Ohio, talking to us. We're also going to go through our opening reading in the beginning of this, discuss some updates from the Mayapack Compassion Warriors, discuss some of the weekly events going on here in New York. There's obviously a lot going on. We're going to take some time and deep dive with Kirk into our relationship, some of our history, and some of our current thoughts on what's going on out in the world. As I mentioned in the last podcast, I've made an intentional, deliberate shift from survival mode, which I've been in for the last 4 or 5 weeks, into thriving mode, right? So we're going to be here for a while. So I want to try to establish some effective processes that can help me and my family stay healthy and happy and be successful for the upcoming weeks and months. So I started a couple training programs this week, which if there's time, I'll talk about a little bit. And again, the general intention here is just to really focus on some positive aspects around the world. Try to take thought where it hasn't been before. There's a lot of change going on right now. So just kind of document my, sifting through this change through Mirkwood and then bringing other folks in to get their perspective and, trying to make sense of it all and then try to, make our path forward a little brighter than it is for a lot of folks out there. So we'll see what we can do. So Kirk Taylor from Columbus, welcome. Cousin Kirk, how you doing?
I'm all right, man. How are you?
I'm doing really well, man. I'm having a good day, a good week. I'm really glad we've connected over the last few days and weeks, and I look forward to talking to you today.
Definitely, without a doubt. Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into it.
Right.
One small program note. I've been kind of back and forth with the frequency of this podcast, when I'm going to record it. I'm trying to figure out what works, what makes the most sense. So the most recent update is that it's going to be a once a week program on Sundays. I think this is what makes sense for me right now. So I'll do the podcast once a week, and then I'm going to work to update my blog on a daily basis so I can update the pictures of the Compassion Warriors efforts and other things that are going on around us. But I think I'm going to keep this, build up the content for a once a week podcast. So that's my idea as of now, but that is also, as everything, subject to change. So let's go ahead and get into it. So I've been posting about daily readings from the Dalai Lama on my blog and on Facebook over the last few weeks. And that's really helped me to focus on some positive words. And it's really, they've always made sense for what's going on in the day. And I was going to bring that into the podcast, that concept. But something didn't seem right about it. So as I chewed on it with Kirk a little bit, and he brought up the idea of just bringing in a different reading each week of someone else whose, words have spoke to me. So it's funny because as soon as he said that this morning, something jumped off the page and spoke to me. So a couple days ago, I had watched a Tom Waits live video, and he's one of my favorite musicians and artists of all time. And he's very jazz based, right? So it got me thinking of jazz and how there's some jazz I really love and I've loved for years, but I've never really deep dived into jazz. So I decided I was going to rewatch the Ken Burns series, which I had watched before, which was fantastic. But I'm seeing everything through different eyes now. So I knew that my calling was to watch that series over again. So I made that decision on Friday. And then this morning I woke up and, a circumstance had led me to a Gil Scott-Heron song called Lady Day and John Coltrane, which is about how circumstances can be bad and Billie Holiday and John Coltrane can soothe your soul, which was just kind of right where I was at the moment. So I went and I immediately listened to a Billie song and a John song. They did exactly what Gil said it was. They really soothed my soul and, made me feel good. So I immediately jumped in after that to watching the first episode of the jazz series. And one of the first things in the beginning when they're interviewing Wynton Marsalis about it is he gives a quote from Art Blakey. And the quote was, jazz washes away the dust of everyday life. And, that's kind of what Gil Scott-Heron's message was in his song. And it's exactly what it did when I listened to Billie Holiday and John. So that's my guidance this week is I'm going to continue watching the jazz series. I'm going to be diving into my guitar and jazz guitar and filling that piece of my life up. So that's my opening reading for the week, that, jazz can wash away the dust of everyday life. I think jazz might be rap or country for other people. But, I think reach out to whatever kind of music. So I think music has that power. And that's kind of the underlying message of that, of Art's quote. And I think you would agree that whatever music you listen to, classical, some Beethoven does it for some. So whatever that might be for you, give it some extra time to help soothe your soul a little. So that's my reading for the week. Kirk, any comments on that?
No, it's definitely a good one. immediately makes me think though that well, at least remember that I saw my first jazz show ever was Art Blakey, and it was so I got to hear Art Blakey himself do one of his famous jazz sermons, he would call them, where
Wow.
he'd basically break, like music would stop, or he'd do it as a kind of intro, and he's like, and he would just, everyone got quiet, and he would just sort of lay it out, and and he called
Wow.
them jazz sermons. And there's a famous anecdote about that where they're passing by a funeral. They're driving down south somewhere to a gig, and they see a funeral, and he steps out, and and when they come time for sort of ask everyone if there's anything anyone would like to say about the deceased, and Art Blakey, when they ask Art Blakey, something along the lines of, well, if anyone doesn't have anything to say, I'd like to say a few words about jazz. Whether or not that's true or not, that's definitely one of those stories that could sort of grow bigger than the artist himself. But
Oh, that is so funny. Where did you see him? Do you remember where you saw him?
I did, at Michael's Pub in New York City.
Wow.
It's called Michael's Pub. I don't know if it's around anymore.
Do you remember what year, what time period?
My dad took me to, I had my first beer in a jazz show.
Really? At that show?
Yeah, I was 18, I think. Yeah.
Wow. And that's funny because I've told you the story. I remember being 15-ish, having one of my first, well, not my first beers, one of my first beers in a bar, seeing Joe Henderson with you in a bar in New York City. You must have been 25 and I was 15.
I was returning the favor, it's like a karmic sort of thing. I'm stuck in this loop. I'm sure I'm going to do it with my son when he.
Right. Oh, that's great. That's great. Oh, good stuff.
That's true though. Joe Henderson. That was I'm glad I got to see him. So,
yeah, me as well. One interesting thread also about the Billie Holiday John Coltrane connection. After I listened to the song, I just looked up a little history of them both. Both were from New York, obviously. Both big influences in New York. Interesting fact: they both died on July 17th, the same day. Different years. Billie was 1959. John was 1967. But both July 17th. Kind of interesting.
That's fascinating.
Interesting confluence of events.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah, interesting. All right, so moving on to our warrior update for the week. So the Mayapack Compassion Warriors, my group that's helping support the nurses and doctors at the White Plains Hospital through sending snacks and cards and signs of support and love. I had a great week. We sent packages almost every day, including this morning. I met Katie at 6 a.m. this morning. We sent snacks down. We're also starting to send snacks with my wife to her job at the Westchester Medical Center, Results Lab call center. So they're going to get a little cheer and a little pick me up in the afternoons. So we'll be doing that again this week. So we had a couple new donors last week. So much thanks to Gaynor O'Neill, to Sue Stone, to Ann Pearson for helping support the cause this week. And then we had some repeat donators, Sue O'Brien, Jay Savino. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We've also had about 5 other people reach out and pledge their support through either making cards and snacks or sending some money. So we're building up some momentum here, which is good. We did, on a side note, my family went and did a little parade, a family parade for my cousin who's a nurse at the White Plains Hospital. So I think we had about 7 or 8 cars with about 16 people, and we all drove up about half hour north, and we drove through a neighborhood, and we had signs, and we made noise and blasted music, and then we stopped and we safely, socially distantly had some conversations and showed our support and love to her and to her boyfriend Kyle, who's an officer up in Dutchess. So that was really touching to not only to see my family, but to kind of collectively shower our support to to the frontline workers in our family who are doing a terrific job. And it's not easy for them day in and day out going into that situation. But they're doing an amazing job. And I think they appreciated our support. We really appreciate and love them. And, I know a lot of people are doing that for their families out there. And we're seeing a lot of good positive outreach from people, whether to help or to support their family members. And that's what we need to focus on, right? That's back to the Mr. Rogers statement of what do you do in a situation like this, and focus on the helpers, right? And right now they need our focus and our help, not in a fearful way, but in a supporting way. So yeah, it was a good week for that. I'm looking forward to continuing, the Mayapack Compassion Warriors working with Katie, and we'll do it as long as it's needed. My initial intention was for 2 weeks as New York was approaching the apex. But now, we're kind of through the apex and we're not through the woods yet. Mirkwood goes a little further. So, I'm going to hang with it. Do we kind of support, recruit as many people? If anybody wants to lend their support, please contact me. Anything little as making a card and just putting a little love into it and sending it down with us is great. There's a launching point every day from my house to send stuff down. So give me a call. Let me know. Shoot me a note on Facebook, or send me an email. But the more the merrier, and the more support we can get, the more we can support our frontline workers. So yeah, good news on Mary Pack Warriors, and more good news to continue. Okay, so the next segment, just some couple updates on what's going on in New York. A few notes. We did go to mandatory masks last week. When everybody's out and you can't socially distant, you have to wear a mask now. Also, grocery stores are only allowing one person per family in. I think a lot of states are also following that, which makes sense. Now's the time where we just have to be smart and diligent, hyper diligent as we can. I see they're also starting to discuss reopening, which from my perspective in New York is a little scary at this point. I don't think that's necessarily something we should be discussing, but we'll see. I know they're starting to at least plan. We have to at least plan for when we can make that reopen step, but it's a little tricky there. All right, so Kirk, how about out in Columbus? Are things similar? How are things in Columbus this week?
Yeah, good. They're also, we're at the point now where, because of the sort of national climate around everyone having been in place for a while, we have similar stay-at-home order. I think our situation is fairly similar to where you're at in terms of the actual, orders from the state. So we're still shelter in place, but that potentially May 1st, everyone's looking at this idea that there'll be this transition starting to happen, where they're going to, beginning May 1st, look at the possibility of some places, essential places, being open, and not just essential, but also, the idea of when stores open, are people wearing masks? Everyone should be wearing masks. They're only letting so many people in at a time. So there is that discussion already. Of course, a lot of people, I myself, obviously, I agree with so we should definitely take our time with this and be cautious. There's a lot of also talk about the repeating history with where in the flu epidemic of 1918, they lifted restrictions too early, and there was a massive, so many more cases of deaths after they lifted those restrictions. The numbers just climbed up into December of 1918.
Right.
And I was just looking at that, and that's definitely a risk, and that's what a lot of the health officials are worried about. Ease them too quickly, and we could end up seeing a big spike, down the road here.
Well, in Florida, the governor just opened the beaches, right?
Right? Yeah, we should all hit the beaches. Yeah,
it's a little scary.
I know so everything's fairly quiet. There's still limits on how many people can go into the store, but there are folks going about and doing what they got to do. And obviously we're in Gahanna here, which is just outside of Columbus, and they're doing a good job of managing the situation. So
good. Yeah, that's good to hear. And you're right. We have to begin discussing how we're going to climb out of this, how we're going to eventually assimilate back into society and be functional. I think it has to be eventual. I think that's smart, right? You phase in in a safe way. You see how that goes. If it doesn't go well, you pull back, right? And that's I think the only logical way to do it. But the beaches just got open, so who knows what's going to happen.
People are very impatient, and
I'm sensing that. Yeah.
American temperament is really pretty much, okay, we're this is enough with this nonsense. Let's get back to shit. We got shit to do here. So, but it's an understandable feeling. We're all frustrated and tired, and everyone especially people, I can't even imagine the people really working hard in the front line. So all we're doing is staying at home here, right, which is the best thing we can do to keep ourselves and everyone else safe. It's just for me and my wife and son, that's just the best thing for us right now, is to stay put. So we don't go out. We don't go out ever, really. But other than to keep, that's why it's good to have these connections and these threads like you've got set up here with the Zoom. But anyway, I don't want to.
Yeah, we have to stay connected. We all have to stay connected. It's if we can't have that, handshake or hugs and physical interaction, we need some kind of connection, or we're gonna, spiritually starve. Right? We won't be, and our happiness is hard to achieve. Right. Unless you're completely by yourself in meditation, or you're, with society and living. Right? I agree.
Yeah, exactly. So, making those connections with my family in the best ways I can. I can't, a lot of my family's up in Cleveland, so I can't just drive up there and give them a hug. But, that's sort of not what we're doing now. So it's this finding these other ways of connecting. I tend to be the one who sort of really pushes that. I call my brother, check in with him. He works at a grocery store.
Mhm.
Call my sister. I don't get a lot of calls from them. Apparently, they're not as worried as I am. But
Well, and I think people are reacting in different ways, right? And I think even subconsciously, right? Someone might be really frightened and acting a certain way and not know it. And there's just a
exactly.
lot going on, and it's
Oh,
tough.
I know.
It's difficult. It's difficult to traverse the current, shark-infested waters.
Yeah.
So let's dig into our history a little, Kirk.
Yeah.
You've been chatting now for 15 minutes, and then
Okay.
you're in Ohio, and you're my cousin. But let's give our listeners a little more context.
Okay,
So
yeah, that's true.
why don't you start?
Yeah, well, you're my cousin. It's like my said dad's side of the family, and yearly at some point, our parents must have got together and got the brilliant idea that we should drive from Cleveland to where you guys are at. And,
Thank God they had that idea, or we wouldn't really know each other.
I know we would have. Thank God we bothered. Yeah, no. So we came up, and in the beginning, it was just kind of coming up, and we were all really young. You were very young. This would have been in the late 70s, early 80s. We thought 80 maybe, or yeah.
So I would have been 5. I would have been 5 if it was 80.
I know. Yeah,
Yep.
it's crazy. Yeah,
And
so
you're 10 years older, so you would have been 15.
15. Yeah. So and of course I'm a little older than John too, who's your brother. So it's like Carl. I had my younger brother with me and my older sister. So our parents obviously did their thing and had a lot of fun. I remember them always having a good time.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Hanging out in the evening, but yeah, we found our own things to occupy ourselves, and yeah, and you had that amazing space behind your house, which
Yeah, let's talk about that amazing space behind my house.
yeah, let's do that. It's thematically related, so yeah.
So the area behind my house, it's kind of a swampland. It's not huge. I think it's a half acre or an acre or so. It's 20, 30 feet off the deck in the small patch of lawn. And there's a trail between my house and one of my friends growing up's house, which we used to pass all the time. But if you go in, there is a pond, and there's ferns everywhere, and it's murky. It's very murky, right?
Yeah. Thus, yeah.
Thus, one day you came up with the name Mirkwood for it, right? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Okay, that's right. That was me.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that really just simply at the time I was playing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, like a lot of kids, my age, and also was really into Tolkien because my father loves Tolkien,
Mm-hmm.
and my dad would get the calendar every Christmas. He would get the new Tolkien art calendar.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. He had the Silmarillion, and he had the Tolkien bestiary on the shelf. So my dad was real. I mean, I had good access to some really good Tolkien stuff,
and he listened to jazz too, right? Your dad listened to jazz,
and he listened to jazz, man. Yeah. Well, he at least owned the 3 essential jazz, albums that were must own for a white, middle class nerd. In the 60s, you had to at least own these 3 albums: Kind of Blue, Dave Brubeck's Take 5, and I think the other one was Getz and Mulligan. So you had to stand Getz or a Mulligan, with their crew cuts and their Ray-Bans, It's like,
oh, that's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh,
Nice.
I have to inject a quick story. You mentioned Dave Brubeck. The one I took my wife to see him at Purchase, her college. It was when we had first started dating, and I went with my friend's parents. So my friend his parents wanted to see the show, and he wanted to get him tickets for the anniversary. So Mandy and I ended up going, and we saw Dave Brubeck, which was awesome. I'm so glad I had that experience. But
Good for you. Yeah, never
didn't
did.
get to see Mulligan or Getz, but
No, in fact, yeah.
or Miles.
I never saw either. Miles I saw three times.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, twice. I saw him twice. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah,
So
I did.
back to Mirkwood.
Mirkwood, yes.
So you had developed the name, and you had kind of given it that moniker, and it had always been in my subconscious, but back then it didn't really mean a lot to me. We talked the other day about this, and kind of the I think where Mirkwood came for you, as far as like a swamp and an adventure land, like me in that time when we started talking about it, I thought about Dagobah, right, with Luke training with Yoda, right? That's kind of what my vision of what that area and playland for us, Fantasyland, would have been.
Right.
But when we started talking and Zooming, right, connecting like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Right.
And I started developing the idea for this podcast. For some reason, like as I was finding, what was I going to call myself, right? Dooner, like my name. I was like, well, what are we going to be? What am I trying to do, right? Being close to New York City, and then, which is this, we're coming up against this battle, and what was my intention? And then Mirkwood just popped in my head, and it was definitely through our conversations and bringing back the time we'd spent together.
Yeah.
And then there it was. And it's been fun as I've looked into it and try to develop this and what my message is and what I'm trying to do for me and for anybody who's listening. And I think it's really appropriate. It's just, we don't know what's in there. We don't know what the future holds. Right.
Yeah, it ended up being a pretty good metaphor for our time and for what you're sort of doing this. As I thought about it more, and again, it was because I was reading The Hobbit at the time when I would come visit you, that it was on my mind. So going back to that, but it's just really incredible that I reread some of the lines from The Hobbit and then thought more about the whole idea of Mirkwood in the dark forest and realized, thinking about where I'm at with my 4-year-old son right now and sort of watching him try to navigate these times, that it also, for him, he's sort of facing a dark forest, and and he is afraid and uncertain, and we have to go through this time and get on the other side. You even used, even briefly just mentioned, use Mirkwood as an analogy in regards to something else you were saying. And it is easy to use as a metaphor or analogous to what we're experiencing. It's weird, as I just thought about this really quick random fact, is that weirdly enough, that the origin of the COVID-19 virus, this particular coronavirus, is believed to have been from a bat, transmission to an animal in those live animal markets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so but it's interesting because there is this real issue about industrialization kind of encroaching on the dark forest, so to speak.
Right.
And what's happening is it's damaging, these forest areas, and that's making what's trapped within the dark forest accessible and a threat, because they believe that these bats are interacting with animals in these live markets that are pushing up against the forest, and that it's exposing these virulence from bats. I don't know. It's really weirdly analogous.
It is. You're right. It is.
Yeah. So it's just something that dawned on me as I was thinking about.
When you had said too that concept is a common theme, right?
It is, and
it's a lot of fantasy and fairy.
Hansel and Gretel and Red Riding Hood has to go into the dark forest to face,
right.
or Hansel and Gretel go within the dark forest to find the gingerbread home and have to defeat the darkness within in order to escape and move on.
The Princess Bride.
Yeah. Yeah. It's but no, Mirkwood. Yeah. And again, it's but that space, I thought about it too as this time in my life that really ended up being really important to me, and that it sits in my mind, in my imagination, in my heart, in a way that other memories don't necessarily, because it was, I think, because we created this sort of world separate from our parents, from our lives. We put aside, you would put aside your everyday friends because we were there visiting. My whole life was left behind, and I was able to take what I was thinking about and imagining and bring it out there into the woods. And I remember it being vast and dark and mystical and strange, even though I'm sure it wasn't. Or it's very, you say it's a very small area, but in my mind it was massive,
Well, it was a long time ago. We were smaller, our minds were smaller, right? Everything, our perspective was smaller, right?
Yeah, it is my Mirkwood, it's like the thing that we carry with us that has so it sits in my has a special place because of that, but I I don't know. It's so funny that it took hold for you too. So it's weird when you got back in touch with me and this sort of came together. It is such an odd thing because I never would have imagined it would take hold in that way for you too.
Well, it was reinforced over 10 years, right? And like you said, we had this time that was really specific. It wasn't like, it was different than going on vacation somewhere.
Oh yeah.
It was different than it was different than anything, right? And again, and you just mentioned something I didn't think about, is the separation even from our parents. Like we were given freedoms that we usually didn't have.
Yeah.
The week before, or the week after, but there was something special about those few days. Yeah. So it was reinforced over a long time, and then so it just stuck in our psyche because it's happy times that we had an unimpeded ability to create what we wanted to create.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm finding an analogy to that to right now. Right. I think we have so much time that we're spending at home with our family, with our resources, right? With my guitar, with my books, with your art, with there's, so if we really plan and utilize that time and be creative and kind of make the fact that we're stuck inside, there can be freedom in that if we turn it around for ourselves.
Yeah.
So just a thought that came to my mind.
There you go.
But yeah, it's been great kind of chewing on this and developing it. And I know now that I'm making my deep dive into jazz, that it's going to be great, talking with you as I go through that.
Yeah, I guess it's jazz is definitely a subject I love talking about. I don't have a chance to, though. I don't,
Right.
not many people I can talk to about jazz in a way that I could talk to you about it, especially since we actually shared experiences. And so out of Mirkwood, we grew this sort of relationship that became more about these, we'd meet in New York for these musical, confluences, these great artists that we'd run into and come across.
I met Lou Reed when I was with you.
Yeah. On my urging. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to go up and say hi. So
that was a John Zorn Masada show, right?
John, was it the Masada? It was.
It might have been the Masada show.
The Masada, yeah, but it was Zorn, and he had his camo pants, and he was walking through the audience. Remember, and then Philip Glass was sitting over there. Do you remember that?
Yep.
He goes and he gives Philip Glass a stack of CDs. I'm like, oh, he's got it like that, I guess. Oh, he's just Philip Glass, though. But yeah.
Right. Well, that was so small too. That old knitting room.
That was
the knitting factory room was small.
It was small.
Yeah.
That was an amazing. Those are some great shows.
That was fun.
You ended up seeing more of that John Zorn retrospective than I myself did, actually.
Yeah.
You were a dogged. You're much better about pursuing and going to show. I haven't seen nearly as much live music as you've seen in your lifetime. Yeah,
I've seen a lot, but it's
But
I've been digging through a lot of it, digging through a lot of my ticket stubs and rethinking those shows and trying to.
I mean, I'm glad that I did see the ones I did see. So in New York, I was able to, that's where but yeah, the jazz. I mean, I saw so many incredible, small art, small, lesser known, obscure saxophone players. I saw this guy, Frank Morgan, who's a veteran. He's been around forever, but he's not as very well known. But Frank Morgan's a beautiful alto player. He served some prison time when he was younger, when ex-con kind of jazz guys. But a guy could play an alto. I saw him at the Village Vanguard, which was the Sweet Basil and Village Vanguard were two of my favorite places.
Very cool.
But I remember I got to see, Max Roach at the Blue Note. I was like right in front, oh yeah, man. I got Arnett Coleman event at Lincoln.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
That's sweet. That is sweet.
It was I saw a great little show at Knitting Factory. Steve Swallow and Carla Bly, who he's a very lesser known bass player, but he plays electric bass, like an 8-string bass.
I know Steve Swallow.
Oh my God. I get to chat with him. He walks out with Carla Bly at the end. I'm sitting out smoking on a stoop, and I'm like, they're dressed black head to toe and gray hair, and she's got the crazy Carla Bly hair, and they walk out looking uber cool, and I mean, they're like the epitome of New York. And then and I was just like, hey man, thank you for and he just kind of like gestured like that he heard me. And
cool.
But yeah, I got to watch them just play piano and duet. It was a duet of just her playing piano and him playing bass. So but yeah, I saw a lot of shows like that. But yeah.
Well, we're definitely gonna have to continue and talk about that more, especially as I delve into jazz, and we both remember more things that we don't remember right now.
That's true. Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah. No. Anytime. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah, we're definitely gonna continue this conversation on in the near future. But we're almost out of time for this week. Kirk, it's been great talking to you.
Yeah, you too.
Again, we'll definitely be doing this again. Maybe next week we'll have to talk.
Anytime.
Awesome. Thanks,
man. Thank you so much. Yeah, you're doing a great job and great stuff up there, by the way. So
thanks, cousin. I appreciate it. Your support.
Doing. Yeah.
So yeah, other than Kirk, I definitely plan to get some other folks on here too. If there's anybody that'd like to come on or have a recommendation, please shoot me a note, give me a call. Also, I'll be doing my story time ideas. I've been digging into some of my more colorful interactions with people and stories. I'll be developing that over the next couple shows as well. I wish everyone a good week. Please stay safe, be well. I want to thank, again, all the Maypac Compassion Warrior donators and supporters. Please keep up the good work. I'll keep it up from my end. So the more support I have from out there, the better it'll be for our nurses and doctors. Tell your friends and family about my podcast. Please listen and email me with any feedback or ideas. I'm open to making this more, functional and fun for everybody. And my final thought is, is there's always something positive about everything and everyone. We got to find it and amplify it. Right? I think there's a lot going on that people just look and immediately go drawn to the negative, but every situation and person does have a positive aspect. So try to take the time to look and try to find that and amplify that as opposed to amplifying the negative. I think that might help and serve us all well. So on that note, everyone have a great week. We'll talk next week. Again, this is Mike Dooner, broadcasting from Mirkwood One Studios in Mahopac, New York, and we'll talk next week. Bye, everybody.